Welcome everyone to the second session on cybersecurity today. And in the program today, we've already heard about lots of change that we're facing in the automotive industry. We've heard about lots of software, especially open source, about data-driven approaches, about transformational changes to how we do development. And in this panel discussion, we want to look at this from the security point of view. So what changes from security point of view? We're going through a shift to automated driving, the software-defined vehicle, and we want to see what kind of risk-based strategies do we need to secure vehicles and the products over the entire life cycle. And for this, I'm really happy to have such an excellent and wonderful guest over here that I want to introduce now. So we have Felix Mark here. He's from Daimler Truck. He started working in the domain of vehicle cybersecurity back in 2017. You studied intrusion detection prevention systems, and you're now focusing on building solutions in the domain of vehicle cybersecurity monitoring, as well as organizational aspects, cybersecurity culture. So you're bringing, if I want to summarize this, the commercial perspective, commercial truck, commercial vehicle perspective, monitoring. Welcome, Felix.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Next to you, we have Frank Schubert. He's head of security at the SDV Hub at CARIAD. His security team designs the architecture and implements technologies and processes. They perform testing for future software-defined vehicles. And Frank, you were previously active in various cybersecurity roles, from engineering to management, at Airbus, at the German Aerospace Center. So you're bringing now at the Volkswagen Group a very multi-brand perspective, I would say, multi-brand OEM. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you.
Then we have Alessandro Fasacci from the Iveco Group, and you're responsible since 2015 for cybersecurity for all Iveco Group product lines. Since 2016, you're also heavily involved in regulatory work, standardization. If I'm not mistaken, you are or were part of the OICA Task Force Cluster 4, WG, Connect, Cyber Task Force in ACIA, ISO SAE 21434, of course. So also a commercial vehicle perspective from Iveco and also a standardization perspective. Thank you, Alessandro. Welcome.
Thank you. Also with you.
Then we have Elmar Schoch. He heads the automotive cybersecurity concept team at the BMW Group. They're designing the security concepts for future vehicle generations. And your group is responsible for a lot of the onboard topics, I would say, Ethernet network security, and you're bringing new technologies like MACsec into security, into serious production. Welcome, Elmar.
Thank you.
And finally, Frédéric Gamay from Ampere, part of the Renault Group. And you previously worked in defense and medical industries, and now you help Ampere define the software-defined vehicle architectures of tomorrow and keeping the solution safe and secure. Of course, we had the cybersecurity panel. You're leading security software solutions, paving the way towards post-quantum cryptography, designing safe centralized architectures. You're also very active in the Rust community. Welcome, Frédéric.
Thank you very much.
So I'm really impressed by all the real-world hands-on experience you bring to the table here. But of course, also you're a part of this here at in the Wagenhallen and also online. The way we're going to do it, we're going to have a discussion here and get it started. And after some time, I will take your input, okay? So if you have some aspect that you want us to discuss, take a note. And after about 2/3 of the time, we'll see how the discussion goes. I'll open up the space, take your input, and then we have another little bit of a discussion. And the same works also online. So you can input this into the Menti, and we'll get this and have another round then afterwards. All right, so I mentioned that we have a lot of change and a big shift that we're going through. How do you see this? And I'm going to start with you, Alessandro. How do you see this from your personal role, this shift? How do you experience that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Of course,
one step behind. We start from a situation where, as a Yadi OEM, we reach a very important goal this year, because this year for July 24 is the last application date for the regulation 155. It was a very important goal for all of us. We, as a Iveco Group, we obtained certification at the end of 22, starting with the first vehicle certificate in October 23, and we did the last vehicle certificate in more or less June 24. So it was a very important challenge. But as you know, the risk is evaluated at the 155 is the risk-based. We perform the risk according to the current situation, and we fix the risk with cybersecurity control, with state-of-the-art solution where it's possible to apply. This is not often is not possible to perform this. But the regulation asks us to protect our vehicle during the full lifetime. This means that for commercial vehicle trucks, we have a different challenge from the passenger cars, because a lifespan of a passenger cars is more or less 12 years. A commercial vehicle lifespan is 20 years. That means that OEM commercial vehicle need to identify a long-term strategy that works on all the key technology in the vehicle. This is one important challenge, specific challenge for commercial vehicle area. But the future will see, of course, a new increase in the software development. We are going to the software development, software-defined vehicle era. That is very, very important for us. This era will have impact, a big impact of different aspects in the company, from different layers, from product point of view, from people point of view, and from process point of view.
Okay, so let's explore them. But you spoke of the specific challenges for commercial vehicles. So Felix, do you want to add on that?
So maybe one aspect that is really important to point out or take up that you mentioned. You said this topic of our operation phase is a huge challenge. And I agree with you. I guess for trucks, it's a bigger challenge maybe than for a passenger car. Partially out of the lifetime that you mentioned, but also just from a usage perspective and the risk perspective that we have. I mean, when our trucks are down or buses are down, economy is down. So, because no goods get to the people anymore, we don't get our stuff back home. And with a passenger car, also there, obviously, people are annoyed when their vehicle is not driving anymore in the morning, but it's maybe not such an economic risk behind it, and we wanted to talk about risk. So for let's say trucks in special case, but also for passenger cars, the topic of managing operational risk over this huge amount of time is, I think, the next big challenge that our industry, and especially the security industry the security in the automotive industry, needs to go through, because the last years they have been focused on how do we ensure security in the development cycle? How do we get risk transparency and risk handling in the development? We started, for example, Caterpillar of years ago, risk management was done on Excel. And luckily, I would say most of us have now tools for that. Good, proper, nicely designed software tools for it, or basically ramping them up. So there we have matured a lot, and now it comes to the operation phase. You said the first vehicles have now the type approvals with security in their mind. Now we need to keep them safe. We need to manage the risk over a lot of years, and this, I think, will be the next big challenge for our industry that we need to deal with.
Yeah. So we
Monitoring.
need to discuss security.
Monitoring, yeah.
So we need to discuss security operations, and you said it's not just technology, also people and processes. Frank, how do you experience the shift that we're going through right now?
Every day.
Every day, yeah.
I literally feel it every day. You know, I'm in the SDV Hub. That's a project that was started by Volkswagen Group to develop the next generation SDVs, right? And there we need to change, of course, our development process. It's software centric. Yes, we're targeting car models in the future, but they go more and more to the background. We focus today in the development on software. So software requires a whole new strategy for doing that, like a CI/CD, new software languages, safe and secure architecture, you name it. So we are doing this while keeping the ability to scale with the brands that we have, right? We must not lose that. So we are also working together with the production to see how can we become faster and work together with them early and not break the production processes. Later on, also with the operation, the same thing. We have to get telemetry from the cars, do operations, a vehicle SOC to observe the cars in the field. And introducing all these new paradigms also from a security perspective is super hard. Like in the past, we did cybersecurity for IT systems. Then we did cybersecurity for cars, for OT. Now everything is converging. We have to look at the backends. We have to bring different security processes together and make it work. So who will make this work? That's the people in the end. And we need to get also the people to work with each other. We cannot have like an ISMS for the backend and the CSMS. Those colleagues should at least go for lunch once in a while. Also, the communication people, right? You look at the cloud backend, you look at the car, there's communication in between, mobile, wireless. There need to be a connection, not just on the formal checkpoints like vulnerability management, also on the social level to work as a security community. And like later on, even bring this into the whole industry to have the companies work together. Auto-ISAC does a good job there. Get a clearinghouse ready for vulnerabilities to react fast on threats. So I think all these changes that we have to do to be able to develop software-defined vehicles and to make them cyber secure, that's what we feel every day.
Yeah. Yet another aspect, right? Alessandro, do you want to add to this?
Yes, can I show the next slide? Because it's very important to...
You brought the slide, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If it's
What
possible,
slide?
to connect to this discussion, because it's very important for us, before I say product, people, and process. The process improvement means, in my opinion, in our opinion, this evolution that means create continuous value creation, basically. In the part of development, we need to use the integration based on DevSecOps. It's very important to start with this part and promote the transition from this classical product development process to continuous engineering and continuous validation. One way to perform this is automated where possible. That means create specific test case and automated it in order to help us insert this inside the tool chain and use agile methodology during the development and insert the sec in the DevOps integration in the process. For us, this is very, very important. We're working on this. And also the vulnerability management, of course, will be a key aspect. Very important. We are struggling now with the supplier to obtain this bomb.
Yeah, supplier management, yeah, another topic. But I also want to give Elmar and Frederick the chance to say how you experience the shift.
Well, quite a bit has been said, I would say. I would maybe emphasize 2 points. Yeah, one is the inherent complexity, which is just by new features that are being brought to our world, in a sense. So it's the automotive world. It's not anymore the car. It's basically about backends, about apps, about external app stores, about, let's say, a whole ecosystem. Think about the charging infrastructure. Yeah, a whole ecosystem has to be brought together and kept secure. And that adds quite a lot of complexity to just the, let's say, the car as a whole. Yeah, that's one thing. And the other thing, I think you mentioned it, it's the structures inside the companies. Yeah, we really need to think about. I mean, DevSecOps is one example. Yeah, you say, well, we need to bring new features into our products, whether it's backend or whether it's the car. at continuous rate. Yeah, we don't deliver at one point in time and then it's over. Yeah, you continuously develop on the stuff, and this is one thing. And all to that, in addition, we need to bring that into our organizations and lift that additional aspect of security basically everywhere. Yeah, so everywhere is somebody developing something, and everyone needs to be aware and minded of what the doing everyone does could bring, add or remove from security. So this is the 2 points I want to emphasize.
Okay, thanks, Elmar. And finally, Frederick.
Yeah, I think this SDV shift is really a mindset change and a cultural change in the companies, because just before you ask your suppliers to do something, right? Please be secure. Please close your JTAG. Please be ISO 21434 and so on. And now with this software-defined mindset, everyone in your company needs to be responsible for security. And that's two aspects of what I call distributed security. That before you could have really much simple points where you could have security like IDS, like gateways and so on. And now you need to distribute that everywhere in your architectures, because you have different people working on different components at different levels. And you need to take care of the full picture of the security, which means you need to act as not a security team by itself in its own silo, but propagating that throughout the company-wide security approach. That's one of the biggest first points that I see. And the other one is, like when you define this, before you had different set of technologies that you needed to take care of to ensure security, like secure boot, JTAG, Ethernet communication, scan, and so on. And now you need to learn about programming language, compilers, CPU architectures, hypervisors, operating systems, Android, and so on. I need to take care of all of this at the same time and managing this for the long term, while ensuring that in 10 years you won't be overwhelmed by a big pile of CVEs that just happened, and you need to deal with that. So now we're in this first phase of, we introduce security practices and great security practices, and it's starting to go into the operational management, like you said, of this, and managing the consequences of the past decisions. And we need to do that for a long time now. So yeah.
So we touched already on a lot of things. So I think supply chain came also up a couple of the supplier relationship, how it changes, came up a couple of points. And we had some one-on-ones before we had the panel. And one thing I still remember, Frank, where you said, also with a view to security operations, how the relation to the supplier changes, and how even beyond the security team or technical team, also for purchasing, then the mindset has to shift, right?
Yes. So the old model, like OEM supplier model, where there's a strict contract in between, like one entity writing requirements in a PDF, giving it to them. There might be phone calls clarifying, and then there will be like a device that will be tested, is not the correct model for like even the standard development, for the software-defined vehicle. And more like a partnership is required, even for normal features, not speaking of security. So normal features in software, often the customer doesn't know what they want, right? So a supplier would start with an MVP and showing if to the customer, to the OEM, does this go into the right direction? Now, transferring this approach to security has more implications, right? The point is, yes, we can like go to a cybersecurity interface agreement and impose the ISO 21434, but even such a risk-based framework does not necessarily lead to like a secure system that's being developed. So we really have to look deep into the security controls, the security concept, the architecture, right from the beginning in a security by design way, also with the suppliers in a partnership, like there's different measures like getting access to source code, discussing with the architects, sitting next to the developers even, right? There's more possibilities. Now on the contract side, that's then the interesting part, how to design this. Do we like get a fixed price still, or can we like buy flat fixes for software vulnerabilities? Like, can I get a flat rate for vulnerabilities for the next 15 years? Yeah. So that's up to the purchasing colleagues to figure that out.
And we have a lot of open source. And Frederick, you mentioned something like audits of infrastructure code and like Google does.
Yeah, so I think this shift is really also concerning, is that you have basically two worlds that are trying to merge together. So the tech companies world and the automotive world, and you also need to manage that. Right now you have this full-fledged infotainment system, so depending on the OEMs you have different brands and custom or not operating systems, but whatever, which are really connected, which are using technologies that are really state of the art in the cloud and web industry and so on. And you also need to learn about this and learn how to integrate this flawlessly in your system, while not having two different silos, where connected people on one side working with Google and Android and so on, and the legacy people on the other side working on automotive stuff. So you need to really make the bridge between those worlds and have common security practices and understanding on the security properties and security concepts of your full system. And that's how I explained just before about the proxy and gateway and Rust strategy that we've developed at Ampere. And that's really an example on how to have this high-level approach of ensuring full system security instead of having black boxes trying to ensure security in one of those black boxes, each after the other one, basically.
Yeah. So there's lots of, I think this is a common thread that we see lots of different worlds and players, collaboration. You mentioned classical IT companies. Felix, you mentioned a conference when we spoke that you went to, where you had kind of an aha moment how things are changing, where you went to, I think it was IT security vendors or something.
Yeah, actually it was a quite similar event than this one today, but it was not like in the automotive security domain, more like the IT security domain. And it basically touches a little bit on what I also described in the beginning. I experienced our industry like focusing in the last years on answering how we develop secure products, doing TARAs, doing security concepts, getting also these processes stabilized that our CSMS basically needs. And the IT basically did this the same. I was a couple of years an IT security consultant, and back in the time it was also focusing on doing TARAs, doing security concepts. And now this year I was on this IT security conference. I was not doing IT security now for 3 years. And actually, when I now came back into that into that bubble, the whole focus was changed, because suddenly it was all about endpoint protection, it was all about detection, it was all about active response, about SOC and so on. And nobody cared anymore about TARAs. And I asked my colleagues who are working in IT still, why do you do that? Why is this focus? And they said, yeah, we learned we cannot handle it anymore. You can do your TARAs and your security concept, and then reality hits and it's different. So you need it, instead of basically focusing on that work and the development, you need to become agile enough and fast enough in the operation phase to basically keep your product secure. And this was something for me really interesting, because I guess this is now the next shift, as I mentioned. We will learn a lot in the operation phase, and then basically the next phase after this, as I guess, is the topic which I actually found interesting that we are talking already so much about it, is the organizational aspect. Because, well, like I think Frederick was it who said it, security is today something which is done in like silos, even if it's distributed, but like with dedicated experts. And this is something that in a world which rapidly changes, you will not be able to do anymore. So you need risk ownership in the dedicated department who are owning also the risk. You need to have security ownership there. And therefore, I think we as security experts, we also need to get rid of the image that security is about magic and that it needs a lot of expertise, because actually security is easy, comparably maybe. So this is... Now we will focus, I guess, first on operation, and then focus will more and more shift into this organizational aspects and how we make the rest of our organizations becoming security leaders as well.
So
I would like to add something to that. At the beginning, you said that we might need to take example from what is done in other fields of engineering security. And it's true that some of the trends that we see today in our centralized architectures, hypervisors, and so on, zonal architectures, is exactly what the cloud people has been doing for 10 years or 20 years. Like in the medical industry, for example, when you want to store some privacy and security control data, which you have those layers architectures basically, and most of those concepts are now landed in our automotive infrastructures. Let's say IDPS is a good example. Hypervisor is another one example that we can have. And I think there was one lot other technologies. Rust is also one big example of this that were adopted progressively by other industry actors, other industry fields. And now we are slowly taking example and trying to take the most profit of those technologies and integrate it into our concepts, basically. And I think that's a way to go for being scalable in the future, because clearly it's become more difficult to keep up with the amount of millions of lines of codes in our system. There is really different responsibilities of different parts of the code. That's an approach to keep in mind, at least.
So it's interesting, and it shows the complexity of the field, right? So we're going from security operations a lot, supply chain, organizational topics, and now we're coming back to maybe more the architecture and the concepts. And then with this discussion on the security architecture and how this should look like to prepare for changes.
Yes, and the point is, you said it just now, there is a lot of state of the art and a lot of technologies going on in IT, in whatever other industries. But actually, I want to make a theory up here. And the theory is, in essence, at least in our business, we still deal, and it will continue like that, with very small, very computational, limited processing power, RAM, and so on. Everyone is cost sensitive on this stage, yeah. And so we will keep up with that. So the theory is, well, we can't install a zero trust, full-fledged IDPS authentication device in a small controller that basically does very safety relevant stuff. Yeah. And I wonder if you have any opinions what this means regarding architecture, because in essence, it means we can transfer the whole lot of stuff that's being developed in IT for security purposes into all of our, I'm not saying any, but all of our ECUs and all of our parts of the system.
We cannot use that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're right. We will have a lot of system, or at least also we in the trucking, I guess, especially because we are even more cost sensitive. We will not bring the latest security into every component, and therefore this aspect, like you mentioned, separation and zoning is and will keep one of the most important aspects when it comes to the technical aspects of cybersecurity. I would totally agree with you on that one. Yeah.
And that's especially, just to continue that discussion, that's in essence means in this discussion about the shift, that there is certainly shift, but in a sense that kind of zonalization, segmentation, that has been, let's say, the paramount architectural basics of IT security some time ago, will still prevail in our business. And that's what I'm saying, that at least in some parts of our systems, we still have to stick with these kinds of security measures that seem to look like the past, but are still very, very relevant for let's say the smaller parts of the systems.
It doesn't look like past, because if you look at some sensitive industries, if you look at sensitive industries, I was talking about the medical industries, defense industries, you still have those layered approach, zonal approaches, and it's clear that we will still have some legacy, let's say low-end, low-power systems at the full end of the zonal system, and those ones you would not be able to integrate all the full-fledged security or rewrite some parts in Rust, for example, or have IDS or EDR in those components. So clearly, and I think that's where the defense in depth approach comes, where basically you have the most best-in-class concept in all your HPCs, where you have the full control of it, or at least most control of it, and dedicate most of the features in those areas to protect what's behind, basically. And I think this is still valid today, and it will be still. I talk a lot about those hyper-converged architectures, where everyone wants to put everything into one single chip with one hypervisor to manage everything, including the safety critical up to ASIL-D. So Netflix on one end and ASIL-D Vision Stack on the other one, on the same chip, same hypervisor. And I think those layered approach will also be to be applied on those kind of architectures and demonstrated that we have the same level of safety as before. And at the moment, it's not the case. So I don't think that's something from the past. We need to see how it applies to the next generations, but it's not something from the past, I think.
So I laugh after how the discussion developed, but I also promised the audience they can take part. So I think I saw that there are some comments from the online audience, but also maybe here. Are there any questions or any aspects you want to put into the... I already see one. Ishant, go ahead.
Thanks. I think this is one of the most interesting discussion I've seen today. So thanks to all of you. I'm Nishant from Deloitte. We are talking about risk-based strategies, right? And as you mentioned, Alessandro and Felix, and also Frank, you mentioned, mostly we have 1:3 or 1:4 ratio of development and operations. So you have 5 years development time, let's say, 5 to 6 years, and then you have 15 to 20 years operations where the risks are happening, right? So risks are happening in the later stage of operation, cybersecurity risk, because if it is not in SOP, maximum you have a delay of SOP, but no cyber risk, right? So risks are happening when it is in operation. Now we are discussing risk-based strategy, which is happening in operation during the development. And first of all, I don't know if the risks are known, what will happen in operation, and that too in 15 years lifetime. So how are we going to make sure that we produce a baby who is 15 years not so vulnerable? So that's what I understand. That's the topic, right? So risk-based strategy in development, but risks are happening in operation, which is neither known today in full, and what will happen in 15 years, I don't know. Then we have cost pressure today. So how are we going to cater to that challenge with organization, going lunch together? It's very difficult, right? So how do you perceive that challenge really?
Okay. So how do we anticipate the risks that are coming up 15 years
in operations in a different thing, and that to 15 years that I say my baby is not so vulnerable. So
before we respond to this, maybe let's also hear if there's one or two more comments, maybe one from the audience here and then from the online.
Yes, we have two online comments or questions. Let me just read them out to you. So the first is, how will the cybersecurity be applied to open source software and AI? So the new technologies. And then we have one question: how do you face the challenge of vulnerability management with a huge variation of hardware and software versions and the combinations within the field? And how do you think one can scale to keep track of all software bills of materials?
Okay. So maybe it's not the same, but also looking at the time a little bit, I would maybe merge your comment, anticipating risk down the road, with the complexity of vulnerability management. And the other one is probably an entirely new panel, but maybe we can do a comment on that. Security for, through, with AI and OSS.
So maybe I can answer the first question. On basically managing risk in the far future is also about keeping knowledge of your past systems and having a strategy where basically you do most reuse among your different versions. So you don't put everything into the trash and keep your SDV platform working and evolve for many years, like having an SDV operating system that we are developing at Ampere and others might be doing as well. And keeping the knowledge and the teams working and having those security practice evolving, which means that in 10 years from now, when you have a vulnerability that happen on your system and you have your nice software bill of materials in place, you will still have the knowledge in place to understand what are the consequences in your platform, because you keep some knowledge on your overall platforms. And if you look at what the smartphone industry has been doing, like with the Android system, for example, or with the Linux kernel, for example, which is another example, you can see that you have this let's say, robustness to vulnerabilities, because you can keep up with a community of people which know well about the system and are able to more closely understand the consequences of vulnerabilities on such system. So I think that's one aspect. That may not be the only aspect, because there are also contractual and so on. But I think from the technical perspective, that's one of the aspects that we might see.
Yes, Alessandro, you want
Yes,
to
I
add?
have other things to add to the first question. If it's possible, the second slide, maybe to have a picture.
You have a slide for every
Yeah,
Maybe you can
things.
Yeah, let's
Just a note, not 15 years on the field, but 20. If you develop, the time for the development is 4 or 5 years. The truck staying in the road 20 years. This is the issue. And during these years, of course, we will expire also the type approval in some case. But we need to continue to provide solution for security till the decommissioning. We have also the decommissioning part that we need to take in consideration, because in case of the supplier declare the cybersecurity end of support, we need to manage also this. Is very important. But coming back to the monitoring is very important phase that come after the production and provide us the correct feedback in order to adjust the solution, to make the solution effective, because of course it was developed long time ago with the whole technology, and we need to adapt the solution. This retraction is very important, but it's all important to build a very robust solution with deficit depth that will enable us to have a more layer before to reach the core of our functionality. That means protect the ECU, protect the connection, the communication between the ECU, provide also architecture solution, and of course also backend solution. This will improve our solution to the best, very robust, but in any case, the retroaction will help us with the monitoring. We have a lot of solution. Intrusion detection system is one of the solutions that could be applied.
I think I see Frank, you want to make another comment.
And the key to that is what you said is updatability. In the past, operational technology was not updatable. Medical devices, defense, cars, they were like behind walls, like in a castle. Now we are turning the castle into something that's being built continuously. So we need to keep our CI/CD hot for 20 years, like the colleagues described, and make sure each component is updatable. And we cannot bring like millions of cars every year to a garage. That's impossible. You know, same goes for satellite. I cannot fly to a satellite and fix it. Same for cars. They are on the Earth, okay, but still millions of cars. It's impossible to do that. So everything needs to be updatable over the air.
Excellent point. Yeah, thanks.
This is the way.
The real solution is this for no other solution inside the vehicle, but update the software in order to provide the reaction. This is the real reaction.
I wonder if you have some comment for the person who wanted to know about AI and open source, if one of you has a comment on that.
I have maybe a short comment. The first comment, or the first part of it, is major aspect was said in the keynote this morning. The industry, when it want to make use of open source, it needs to have a trusted maintainer who can basically ensure some standards and some basics. That is one aspect. And when it comes to AI, I mean, AI helps in becoming more efficient. And this is also something that our industry needs. But actually, I see the AI aspect more in the topic of operation, because it makes it easier to understand vulnerabilities and do the filtering. What is the stuff that I need to take care of now, where I need to develop an update, which I push to my customer.
Thank you so much. So I don't know about you. I could keep going. If they would bring snacks, I think we could go for a couple of hours. But yeah, so we covered a lot of ground. Yeah, so we started with security operations, supply chain, how the mindset needs to change. We talked about some of the solutions, updating an important point, keeping knowledge alive. We talked about things like the Rust initiative, horizontal collaboration in the industry, how the mindset also needs to change to non-technical teams and so on. And in the end, we still have to make it work within the automotive industry with cost, with limited resources on board, having the proper security architectures. Thank you for all of your insights. Thank you for the questions. I hope you enjoyed it. and enjoy the rest of Ethos Connections.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And let me add one more thing. You have been awarded as the most interesting discussion of the day. Let's keep that in mind. So thank you very much. I also feel like we could have spent 1 hour more. Maybe you keep in mind also the GenAI open source security topic for the next time. I think that's a hot one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And also enjoy you the rest of your day. Thanks for having us here on the channel.
Thanks a lot.